Tibetan administration. Central Tibetan administration, Hi Rob, is the government in exile for the Tibetan people and the Tibetan diaspora, and it is seated in Dharamsala, India, sort of northern India. For those of you that are a bit newer to the cause, His Holiness the Dalai Lama sought exile in India in 1959. A large Tibetan population was established in India at that time and has flourished since then. What's really important for you to understand is that around 2010, there's a division of religious leadership and political leadership. For many, many decades, the Dalai Lama assumed both a political function and a spiritual function. In approximately 2011, he divested himself of that role, and thus an election of a leader, a democratically elected Tibetan leader, started at that time. Penpa was elected in 2021, and he's elected by people that include people right here in Canada. Because like other elections that take place, I think the Italians do this, for example, diaspora communities have a vote in these kinds of elections. James and I and others in Canada represent large numbers of Tibetan Canadians. They get to cast a ballot for people like Penpa. His mission has been constantly, when he's been acting on behalf of His Holiness, when he represented His Holiness in Washington, in this new role as the elected leader of the government in exile, is to spread understanding about the cause of Tibet, about the struggle for basic human rights, about linguistic, cultural, and religious freedoms, to promote the middle way approach, which is an approach that sees greater autonomy for Tibetans within the People's Republic of China, and to really ensure that governments around the planet, including our own government, are sensitive to these issues and are advocating for these issues. He's done great work, in particular with the American government, with our government, with many governments in Europe. He's recently just come, I was telling Cody, who just left, he was just at the Defense Forum in Halifax, as his predecessor was year after year after year. There's a great appetite for awareness about this, and what I'm particularly pleased with Sikyong is that when we launched the Indo-Pacific strategy, we talked about shifting orientations in Asia, we talked about Chinese accountability. One of the specific mentions in that document is about holding China accountable for the human rights and the human rights violations perpetrated against Tibetans. And we know, Rob knows this better than probably anyone else in this room, there's a lot of concerns about what's happening in China. And sometimes people talk about Taiwan, they talk about Hong Kong democracy dissenters, they talk about Uyghurs as they should. The Tibetan cause has been existing as a struggle since at least 1959, if not before then. And people like Sikyong at the forefront, making sure that cause remains at the forefront of the collective consciousness, including here in Canada. It's amazing to see so many representatives, multiple parties represented, multiple languages. His French is a little bit poor, but he'll teach us some Tibetan right now. But please, I wish him, if we could wish him a warm welcome. I'll teach you a tiny bit of Tibetan, a greeting, and an expression of sort of happiness is Tashi Delek. So if you say Tashi, sometimes you drop the K a little bit, you say it fast. So you can say Tashi Delek or Tashi Delek. But that would be a nice way of saying it. So if we could all try that out. Tashi Delek. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. His Holiness, this year we celebrated His Holiness' 88th birth anniversary, and now he's on his 89th year. Just before coming here, I met him on 13th of this month. Except for his knee, he's doing very well. And he keeps assuring us that he will live for another 2 decades or more, and up to 113 years of age. There are officials pre-signed that this Dalai Lama will live very long. And I think the main message is for the Chinese government. That's why I also joke with our Chinese friends saying, let's see whether the Communist Party outlives His Holiness or outlives the Communist Party. So, of course, because of His Holiness' age, he's not able to travel as much as he used to do before. And as the elected leader of the Tibetans in diaspora, it's now incumbent on me to travel around the world and talk about Tibet, the situation inside Tibet, and the kind of support that we need. And today we are here in Canada. I was here last year, April, and then James and Arif were in Washington, D.C. for the World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet. It's always a pleasure to have as many parliamentarians visiting Dharamsala, meet with His Holiness, see our administration, because we perhaps is the only exile government with a democratic polity and all democratic institutions in place. We have our Supreme Justice Commission, we have our Parliament, we have our Cabinet, we have our Election Commission, and here in Canada, the PFT led by Arif for 10 years, and we met Garnet also yesterday, and we also met with Bloc Québécois yesterday. because in every country we always look at all-party parliamentary form for Tibet, even in India. So in the United States also, Tibet is one issue that brings Democrats and Republicans together. It's bipartisan. And here it's
should have run a Tibetan for Speaker of the House.
So here also in Canada it's non-partisan, everybody is involved, and that makes our life much more easier to reach out to parliamentarians and seek support. And there will be some initiatives that we will be discussing about His Holiness succession issue, with this religious freedom issue that does not necessarily concern politics, but then of course China always makes it a political issue. They are not concerned about the living 14th Dalai Lama, but they are more concerned about the yet to come 15th Dalai Lama, because they know that if they can control the next Dalai Lama, they can control the people of Tibet. And of course, there are not too many documents about His Holiness succession. So today, the one document that's available is the November 2011 document, and another 1.5 years down the line, His Holiness said that he will consult religious leaders and also take certain decisions. So it's 1.5 years down the line, and we will be looking at all Buddhist communities to come up with resolutions. And if the United States government has already amended the Tibet Policy Act of 2002 to Tibet Support and Policy Act of 2020, which includes the issue of His Holiness succession in that, and a similar resolution or motion here in the Canadian Parliament would be very, very useful. We are also working on a bill in the United States Congress on seeking some recognition on the historical status of Tibet as an independent state, to use it as a leverage for the middle way, because we are not changing our policy to independence. We are following this, because His Holiness always thinks about common interest, and he has always appreciated the concept of European Union. And even now he says that if it had not been for the concept of European Union, Europeans would still be fighting with each other. If that can be applied to Europe, then why not Tibet with China? And we are not angry with China. We only sympathize with China because they are doing things knowingly, but unfortunately. So that's why we say, wherever I go, I always joke saying that, do you have good hospitals here for brain surgery? And if you do have, we can get one leader at a time from China, put common sense in their head. Tibet is one of the most easiest things to resolve, because we are not seeking independence. We have addressed the main concern of the Chinese government in terms of sovereignty. But let's see, we do have some backhanders, but it has not come to a stage where there is nothing concrete as yet to talk about. But we are still pushing, we're trying to reach out, they are also trying to reach out, but let's see how committed they are in that sense. And tomorrow, I think, we will be meeting James and some more members of Parliament, and we will strategize as to what things needs to be done in the times to come. And Arif now is a minister, so he cannot hold his post.
They still want me to captain a soccer team too.
So thank you very much for having me, and along with me is Mr. Namgyal here, who is the representative of His Holiness for North America, United States and Canada, based in Washington, D.C. And I'm also very honored to have Mr. Tsering here, who has been a minister in the Central Tibetan administration for the longest period, for almost 19 years. And when they were at the helm of affairs, we were kids. We follow in their footsteps. And we also have Mr. Gurmeo Wanda, who is a senior bureaucrat within the Tibetan community. He has lived in Japan for many years. Now he lives in Ottawa. So they are the guiding light. They have worked for the cause of Tibet for many years, and we follow in their footsteps. And unlike other communities, we have a leader in the form of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The Mongols, for the first time, the Manchus also came to Dharamsala. They claim to have support from South Korea. We also work with Hong Kongers. I always keep telling the Hong Kongers that we have to institutionalize our movement, otherwise we are facing an opponent. We don't even like to call China our enemy. We have an opponent like China, so we need to institutionalize and organize ourselves, but otherwise then the movement eventually dies away, because you get committed to so many other things, including personal family life, once you become a little more older. So we will be very happy to work with any group that is, that we can work together. all the suppressed groups inside China, and your support is very, very valuable. The pictures that have been taken here, including the 3 ministers today who are present here, sends a lot of message to Tibetans inside Tibet. So I keep telling the Tibetan supporters also that even though it seems sometimes develop fatigue because the movement has been going on for so long with no end in sight, but then we never lose hope because the spirit of the Tibetans inside remains very, very strong, even after 70 years of China's occupation. So thank you very much for your presence.